Good. Thank you very much. I want to call the meeting to order at 4 p.m. We agenda for discussion today on WSP presentation on the official plan, draft policy, directions, and recommendation report is going to happen today. So before we get into that, is there any disclosure of interest? Hearing none. So that's the delegation that we're going to listen to in regards to the presentation update on the official plan, draft policy. Mr. Skorczynski, you want to open us up and introduce our guest, please?
Yeah, so today we have with us Anita Scott and Courtney Lawrence from WSP, who have been working diligently on our official plan and zoning bylaw review to bring us to hopefully approval September of 2026. Today's meeting is an open public meeting. It's being presented by WSP virtually, and it is one of the mandatory meetings we have to have through the process. So it's a pretty simple process today. It'll be a presentation on screen from our professionals at WSP. Any questions from council, and then we'll close it off. Obviously, there's no members of the public here, but we are live. And then this will just carry forward with the process of the official plan and zoning bylaw review, the next step in the process. So with that, I'll turn it over to WSP to take the floor.
So before you ladies get going, if you don't mind, so there's opportunities, because there's nobody in the audience, they're being live, and obviously residents have the opportunity to submit questions going forward, or do they have to come and make an actual request for delegation?
That's a question that I'll leave with WSP. Okay. I'm sure there is, but everything through this process is mandated by public policy.
Okay, great. Thanks. Good afternoon, ladies, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mayor, members of council, and any members of the community that may be watching live. It's a pleasure to be in front of the community again today for the official plan and zoning bylaw review. My name is Anita Scott. I'm the Deputy Project Manager from our WSP consulting team working with the town. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Courtney Lawrence, who is leading the housing needs assessment component. And I can address the mayor's question about public comments. Given that there's nobody in the room to make a delegation, we are kindly requesting that any comments be submitted to the town staff contact, which is Tim Allen, whose contact information will be in our presentation at the end. Members of the public have all the time throughout the project to submit written comments or discuss with members of council or town staff by phone or in person any comments that they wish to share, and they will be forwarded to our team for consideration as we move forward in drafting the official plan. And this won't be the last time that will be before council or before members of the public. So we'll explain some of the future engagement opportunities in our presentation as well.
Good.
Okay, just want to confirm that everyone can see my slides.
Yep.
Thank you. So together with our project manager, Jill McDonald, who was in person in Marathon for the public open house this summer, but could not attend today, we have prepared a draft policy directions and recommendations report, and we're presenting key policy recommendations for the town's draft official plan, which is the next stage of the project. So through this presentation, we'll provide an overview of the official plan review and also the forthcoming zoning bylaw review and where we are, as well as next steps. So as Daryl mentioned, this is a special meeting of council, which is a statutory required meeting under section 26(3) of the Planning Act, and all municipalities are required to undertake such a meeting for official plan reviews. And I do want to mention that the meeting was advertised in accordance with specific statutory requirements in the Planning Act as well. So the overall purpose of the meeting is to present these key recommendations that our team has developed for changes to the town's existing official plan, and we are seeking council's feedback on the recommendations and ultimately to receive your direction to proceed to the next stage of the project, which will be to prepare the draft official plan. So a short project overview as a reminder to the community. Municipalities are required to undertake a review and update of their official plan periodically every 5 to 10 years. And the town's current official plan was last approved by the province in April 2016, so just shy of 10 years. And it's being reviewed now to ensure that the objectives and the land use policies remain relevant to address local issues and also to bring it up to speed with new requirements under the Planning Act, the provincial planning statement, which was last revised and came into effect in October of last year, as well as other provincial policy and regulations that have been updated since the town's official plan was last approved. And we're also assisting the town in completing the concurrent housing needs assessment, which is being finalized pending some additional engagement with local organizations. But the draft findings were presented at the public open house in the summer, and the report is on the town's webpage in draft. So the housing needs assessment is integral in informing some of our official plan recommendations and policy updates to the draft official plan, and also carrying through to the zoning bylaw update. So I will pass it over to Courtney now for some more details on our project progress and where we are to date.
Thanks, Anita. So the project was initiated in April 2025 and is being undertaken in 5 stages, as you see on the screen there. So we are currently wrapping up stage 2, so that's that background review and policy recommendations stage, before we begin preparing the draft official plan, which is anticipated to be submitted to the province for an initial review by the end of the year. It will then be presented to the community at an in-person public open house in the spring, once initial ministry comments have been addressed. And while the final official plan is expected to be presented to council for adoption next spring, the project will continue with the zoning bylaw review through to the next fall, so 2026. Go to the next slide. So since April, we have undertaken provincial and local engagement to inform the project. So that's the 3 documents. So a one-window pre-consultation with Ontario Ministries was held on April 30th, 2025, to obtain comments from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and other provincial ministries regarding required changes to align with provincial requirements and direction. So as an example, comments were received regarding terminology changes, changes to official plan schedules to reflect provincial data like abandoned mine sites, and policies to address housing affordability. Local Indigenous communities were contacted to share information regarding the town's initiation of the project and invited to participate as well. And those communities will continue to be circulated regarding major project milestones, with the opportunity to provide comments along the way. To support the housing needs assessment specifically, several local agencies and organizations were contacted directly for housing specific data. So that includes the Thunder Bay Social Services Administration Board, the local legal clinic, and a local realtor as some examples. The background review undertaken in support of the official plan and zoning bylaw review and the housing needs assessment was presented at that in-person public open house on August 19th, as Anita mentioned. So that's where WSP provided a presentation and engaged in discussions with town staff, council, and residents on key land use policy issues and local priorities affecting the town. The same questions were then asked to participants at the open house were also included in an online visioning questionnaire that was available on the town's website in late August to early September, and that received 30 responses. And the results of this engagement is documented in the final background report. The next slide. So the background report for the project was finalized earlier this month. It presents the current community profile for Marathon, and it provides an analysis of the town's vacant land supply available to accommodate projected growth. And it also identifies required updates to the official plan and zoning bylaw based on changes to provincial legislation and the provincial planning statement from 2024, as well as local needs and community input. The background report also includes an overview of recent provincial legislative changes relevant to the official plan and zoning bylaw review, and summaries of key municipal documents and studies that have been completed by the town since the adoption of the current official plan and zoning bylaw. That background report is also available for review at the town's project website, and you can see that link there on the screen. So as part of the consultant project team, Metro Economics prepared population, dwelling, and employment projections in support of the official plan review and the housing needs assessment. So 2 scenarios were developed to project future growth for a 25-year planning horizon, or to the year 2051. So under the base case scenario, it is based on annual historic trends from 2001 to 2021, and then annual projections following these historic trends to 2051. Under the base case, Marathon's population is projected to decrease by 453 persons to a total of 2,805 persons by 2051, primarily due to an aging population. Similarly, dwellings needed are expected to decrease by 97 dwellings, and total employment is expected to decrease by 92 jobs, although some specific industries like mining and health and social services are projected to increase. The high case scenario primarily reflects the potential impacts of the proposed generation mining project, which, if constructed, is expected to generate 400 to 450 jobs in the town over the next 13 to 15 years. In addition, the Port of Marathon is expected to support more than 20 full-time jobs. And under this high case, Marathon's population is projected to increase by 1,587 persons to 4,845 persons by 2051, with the majority of that growth occurring to the year 2029 and 2031. 779 additional dwelling units are projected to be required to accommodate this growth over that time period. And the total employment growth is projected at 815 additional jobs to 2051.
That's great.
Next slide.
Have those, how do you plan with those year two scenarios, right?
So WSP also completed analysis of vacant residential and employment lands, or also known as industrial lands, within the town's urban service area, referred to the province as the settlement area. So in consultation with town staff, that base case scenario projections were applied to the vacant land supply analysis, as it is agreed that that high case scenario includes several unknowns, including whether the generation mining project will proceed to construction and how many employees would be accommodated through work camp or other workforce lodging, rather than requiring new private dwellings within the town's settlement area. Similarly, while employment projections showed significant growth, much of this growth would occur through those jobs generated at the mine site, rather than needing to be entirely accommodated on industrial lands within the town's settlement area. So using those base case projections, the town has sufficient residential lands and vacant employment, or those industrial lands, within the existing settlement area to the year 2051. However, through this official plan review, it is recommended that the town consider settlement area expansion to prepare for the anticipated population growth should the generation mining project be constructed and result in a need for additional lands for residential, industrial, and commercial uses. And Anita will address this recommendation further in the presentation. I'll pass it back to you, Anita.
Thanks, Courtney. So as we noted, the purpose of this presentation is to present those recommendations that we have developed for changes to the town's official plan, and they are contained in the draft policy directions and recommendations report, which is now live on the town's webpage. And the report contains 23 key recommendations. So our presentation will briefly review these and focus on some of the more significant changes. So recommendation 1 is generally to update the official plan to reflect the numerous changes that have occurred to provincial legislation over the last 10 years, including the Planning Act, and mentioning again the town's official plan was last approved in 2016. We also recommend that the town adopt the document as a new official plan rather than an amendment, and the difference there is that if a new official plan is adopted, it would not need to be reviewed under the Planning Act for 10 years, unless the town elects to initiate another official plan review. For example, if there are significant changes that happen in the town during that time, for example, a key industry coming online. Recommendation 2 is to update the town's official plan vision statement, and this is based on much of the community input that we received about what is important to residents. And we've proposed the following statement. The town of Marathon shall strive to provide a complete community with services for residents of all ages that is well positioned to welcome new industry and support and celebrate local businesses, recreation, and connections to the surrounding natural environment and Lake Superior. The third recommendation is to update the existing official plan objectives which really set the foundation. They're high-level statements that set the foundation for the more detailed land use policies in the official plan. And we're proposing to group the objectives under 3 community priority themes, those being creating complete communities, supporting industry, resources, and business, and stewardship of the natural environment. These themes and the individual objectives under them would relate back to the proposed vision statement, and again would be the backbone of the official plan policy directions. Recommendation 4 gets into the proposed expansion of the town's existing urban service area or settlement area, which is shown hopefully visible on the slide as a red outline. And this comes from the town's existing land use schedules in the official plan. And we've replicated it on our vacant land supply analysis, which is the image showing on the screen. And this boundary generally contains the built-up area within the town's larger municipal boundary, generally reflecting where municipal services are available. So as Courtney mentioned, the town does have sufficient vacant residential and employment lands under the base case projections. The vacant employment lands are concentrated in the purple parcel, and the vacant residential are these kind of dark yellow. So not numbered. Those are the proposed expansion areas that I'll speak to in a moment. So the existing vacant residential and industrial lands are sufficient to accommodate the base case scenario projections because, as Courtney mentioned, there is a decrease forecasted in overall population, housing, and employment to the year 2051. However, the official plan review is an opportunity for the town to prepare for the likelihood of the generation mining project going ahead and generating significant housing and employment, and also spin-off industries. The project's construction hasn't been confirmed, but we understand that it has received all provincial permits and is considered shovel-ready by the province pending funding. So a construction announcement may be imminent or may come at any time. So it is prudent that the town prepares for a potential population boom and the associated demands that this would put on housing needs, commercial and social services for an increased population, and the potential for spin-off industries to develop within the town site as a result of the mine's construction and the operations over the next many years. So to prepare for this potential growth, in working with town staff, we are recommending the town consider expanding the settlement area to add several parcels that are municipally owned vacant lands, and they are numbered on the slide here, 1 through 5. And they total approximately 145.7 gross hectares. And in consultation with town staff, we've learned that these parcels can be feasibly serviced and made available for residential, industrial, and commercial development in the future, should those land needs arise. So the expansion lands are generally located towards the north and south of the existing settlement area boundary or the built-up area.
So Anita, if you don't mind, for the public's information, so 2 is at the end of Stevens Avenue.
Correct.
1 is up behind Penn Lake along Hemlow Drive.
Yes,
Correct?
that's right. I have another slide that will detail the land areas and what these lands are being proposed for, but I can speak to them here. So, yep, the area in dark yellow, which is within the settlement area, is the existing Phase 2 Penn Lake subdivision, which we understand is draft approved, but not yet under construction. So the adjacent area 1 is currently outside of the town settlement area, but you could see it would fill a gap in the overall urban fabric and provide some potential road connections to the Penn Lake area, where currently you have to drive around. And it could be a potential Phase 3 location should the need for another plan of subdivision arise. Number 2 is, as you say, Mr. Mayor, at the end of Stevens Avenue, and it's part of a larger town-owned parcel, but there's only interest in bringing this portion in, which we understand the town had a previous plan of survey completed. So uses on this site may vary, but we are proposing potential additional residential lands as there's continuation of residential in that area. Number 3 is a very large, about 89 hectare parcel that the town owns, which is accessible from Peninsula Road. And this is proposed as potential future industrial lands. There is an existing industrial area already within the town's boundary, but we understand that those lots are not vacant. They are either occupied by uses or privately owned and being used for storage. And we understand a sale has recently gone through as well. And town staff have informed us that if that area were to expand, it would have to expand into Crown land, which would be a separate approvals process to expand the existing industrial park. And so in consultation with town staff, they're recommending Area 3, which is municipally owned.
So just
And
for public, if you
yep.
don't mind, Anita,
Go
because the
ahead.
map is, Area 3 is adjacent to the golf course on Peninsula Road, correct?
It is
Correct.
across from
Yep.
the golf course.
Good.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
And the areas in red that are labeled 4, they are 11, they comprise 11 lots that the town is envisioning for future commercial development along the north end of Peninsula Road, coming into town from the highway. And those lots have been divided through a plan of subdivision. I believe they just have not been registered yet. And number 5 is the existing OPP detachment facility. So no future development plan there, but just recognizing the existing development, we're proposing to bring that into the settlement area as well.
Okay, thank you.
So the table on the current slide is just detailing those areas that I've just spoken to and the individual land areas that they comprise. So again, totaling 145.7 gross hectares.
Great.
So all of these areas represent logical extensions, in our opinion, of the current settlement area boundary. As mentioned, they're town-owned properties. Apologies, I'll go back to the previous slide. They are town-owned properties and they're in proximity to existing municipal water and sewer services, with possibility of extending these services. That would have to come through feasibility studies and detailed design. But there are some cases where these properties, the town has already previously invested in having survey plans and draft plans of subdivision and potential servicing costing completed. So ultimately, I did want to clarify that the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, as the approval authority for the town's official plan, will determine whether the settlement area may be expanded to include the proposed lands based on the rationales that will be documented or are documented in our policy directions and recommendations report. Moving forward to other recommendations, 5 and 6 deal with changes to some of the town's existing land use designations, which are mapped in the land use schedules and have corresponding policies in the town that set out the permitted uses within all of these designations on those lands and other development requirements and constraints. So in some cases, there are existing designations that we're proposing to move to a policy overlay, which basically means they're a layer of information for potential developers to understand and consult. So for example, natural hazards, things like floodplain or valley lands that may pose environmental constraints to development, we're suggesting those be made a policy overlay. And we are suggesting some minor name changes to land use designations and the introduction of a new designation for mixed uses. And this would be primarily applied near the planned active living center and within the area that the waterfront master plan that was recently completed recommended some mix of uses, including residential and commercial. So you can imagine residential upper stories and a commercial ground floor mixed within one building, or an area of the town where commercial and residential would coexist in walking distance to the active living center and other amenities. Policy recommendations 7 through 10 deal with proposed changes to the official plan to be consistent with provincial policy direction, including around mapping and policies for abandoned mine sites, which we understand has been updated by the province, as well as policies to support agriculture, including agriculture-related uses and on-farm diversified uses in the rural area. These are terms that the province has introduced through the provincial planning statement. And we do just want to acknowledge that the town's boundary does not include any prime agricultural lands, which are based on soil classifications, so classes 1 through 3. And in other municipalities that do designate prime agricultural land, these lands are protected specifically for agricultural production. So we don't have that type of agricultural land within the town's boundary. Recommendations 8 and 9 suggest policy changes to support active transportation, such as the many trails within the town, and age-friendly considerations related to housing options, transportation options, and parks and open space to encourage supporting the town's aging population, but also residents of all ages and abilities. Recommendations 11 and 12 pertain to climate change adaptation, and such policies would enable the town to prepare a climate change mitigation plan if council were to direct that as a priority, and encourage the development of climate resilient housing, which we understand the town is exploring through its Housing Accelerator Fund funding that the town was awarded. And further, the province is requiring municipalities to map and include policies that are related to wildland fire hazards. So the province has undertaken mapping of hazardous forest types across Ontario, and we would include an official plan schedule to show the locations of those forest types. And recommendation 13 represents an update to the town's community improvement policies. These policies really reflect priorities and permissions under the Planning Act for the town to prepare a future community improvement plan and to identify a community improvement project area, which could be the entirety of the municipal boundary or just the settlement area. Some municipalities identify just their downtowns as community improvement project areas and so on. Could be more targeted specific areas, specific streets or neighborhoods where community improvements, full development or redevelopment, but often just beautification enhancements and revitalization are desired. So you can imagine popular programs like facade improvements in municipal downtowns often get enabled through community improvement plans. And recommendation 14 pertains to policy updates on cultural heritage and archaeological resources. These updates would largely be to update the terms used in the official plan to be consistent with the provincial planning statement, and also to specify the types of studies related to heritage and archaeology that may be required for certain development applications. So I will now pass it back to Courtney, and she will take you through some housing recommendations.
Thanks, Anita. So recommendation 15 focuses on updating official plan policies to reflect the 2024 provincial policy statement and key findings of the housing needs assessment, which included the need for appropriate housing for residents as they age, and housing that is affordable for residents in particular with low incomes or lower income households. Current policies in the official plan now generally support a range of housing types and also note the importance of facilitating partnerships with the Thunder Bay Social Services Administrative Board. And this recommendation is proposing to further strengthen those policies to enable a broader range of housing options with that additional focus on enabling non-market housing and that deeply affordable housing. We go to the next slide. So recommendation 16 is to update the current official plan policies that speak to secondary dwelling units to conform with the Planning Act and regulations. The province has expanded permissions for additional residential units, and all municipalities in Ontario are required to permit up to 3 residential units on any lot containing a single detached, semi-detached, or townhouse dwelling on parcels of urban residential land that have municipal water and sewer services. So specifically, up to 3 units may be contained within the main building, such as a basement or upper floor apartment, or up to 2 units in the building with 1 unit in a detached building on the same lot, such as a converted garage or a tiny home. Recommendation 17 is to support the development of tiny homes in Marathon and identify the land use designations where they could be developed. It is proposed that tiny homes be permitted wherever a single detached dwelling is permitted, and with considerations for tiny home subdivisions in recognition of the work the town is currently undertaking to prepare lands for this type of development. Recommendations 18 and 19 propose policies that support further collaboration with neighboring Indigenous communities including in economic development and housing, and to recognize the involvement of these communities in the town's decision-making around climate change, natural and cultural heritage, including archaeology. We'll go to the next slide. Recommendation 20 is a general recommendation to revise policies related to natural hazards and natural heritage to be consistent with terminology and policies in the provincial planning statement and ministry comments received to date. And then recommendation 21 relates to shipping containers and proposed policies that would guide their use in certain land use designations, including design requirements for their use as housing, storage, and commercial uses. For example, policies for screening requirements are proposed to be introduced for their placement on residential properties and on properties along Peninsula Road. And now I'll pass back over to Anita again.
I have one question. I want to go back to the natural infringements maybe within the municipal boundaries. And when we had the fire at Fort Mac, there was a recommendation, or at least a consideration by the then fire chief, to look at doing a buffer zone. Do we have to identify that under any regulations within the ministry's guidelines? Or is that something we just consider as moving forward under climate change?
Anita, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can try to. I have not worked on an official plan where we identified a buffer zone related to fire hazards outside of the schedule that just maps the forest types. There is a separate provincial document, a guideline document around how to deal with development that is proposed in the hazardous forest types, and that may be a recommendation in that guideline, but that's something that we can certainly further look into for council and liaise with staff to get a response to you.
No, and I appreciate it. If there's no requirement under the regulations, then that's fine. We had discussion around it. We didn't go forward with it because a 3 to 5 kilometer buffer zone around the community is quite extensive. So if there's nothing in the regs, we don't need to visit it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. So moving forward, we did want to touch on waterfront planning and all of the extensive work that is being undertaken within the town to plan for the revitalization of the former industrial waterfront. So recommendation 22 builds on the recommendations that were included in the draft waterfront master plan that was prepared for the town by a different consultant in July of this year. And these images are from that draft waterfront master plan. We've just labeled them to correspond with some of our land use designation recommendations for the official plan. So the master plan recommended areas within that larger waterfront area that should be redesignated and rezoned in the town zoning bylaw to permit the type of development that is proposed in the master plan. So specifically, a new mixed use designation is proposed in red with the arrow that's pointing and labeled number 1. So this is generally an area along Stevens Avenue between Winton and Drake in proximity to the new active living center, which is shown conceptually in the pink area. And in this mixed use designation, again labeled number 1, we would propose a mix of residential and commercial uses be permitted. So I described that a little bit earlier, but it could be a mix of uses in the same building with commercial on the ground floor and residential apartments above, or as standalone uses in separate buildings, but within the same area. And it would be within walking distance of the new active living center, which will be an important recreational complex within the town. And that new active living center would be designated in the official plan as an institutional use and designation.
Sorry, and would that allow for both condominiums, which have businesses on the ground floor, and standalone businesses like you see in downtowns that have businesses and then apartments above?
Yes, it would. Yeah.
Okay.
Condominium is a type of ownership. So whether it's ownership apartments, rental apartments, plans of condominium, all of those types of residential uses would be permitted, potentially mixing with commercial uses.
Thank you.
So Anita, before we go a little further, and I want to go back because we had discussed this in the past,
Sure.
but maybe it's time to put into the overall official plan. So if you go at the end of Stevens Avenue, identified section 2, back in the, the residential, residential site on that there was a road going all the way down to the ASBSSB site that we had talked about kind of off and on through our strategic planning process over the years that could potentially maybe become a waterfront development for homes to be built on that road, off that road, because there is potential to run the water and sewer lines there as well as the energy. So is that something we should incorporate in the official plan now? Maybe it could be 5 or 10 years out, but if it's not identified, we'd have to go back to the drawing board.
Well, we
Is
have to
that-
make it.
Oh, so we have to make an amendment before?
Yeah, so I would say, at this time, we're not in a position because we've just physically acquired the title.
Right,
So we have not had a chance at all to any kind of feasibility work,
okay.
but it wouldn't preclude us from adding it later on.
So you can amend maybe in 3 years if something changed in the municipality.
It is on, it will be in the budget for next year to start to look at the feasibility of that area.
Okay,
And obviously, there is some interest in the former ASB site
Right.
as an economic development opportunity. So we'll start to look at that in 2026.
okay, thank you, good enough, thanks, Ned.
Carrying forward with the waterfront area, another recommendation is to maintain the industrial designation for certain lands. So all of the waterfront area right now is designated industrial in the town's official plan. So we understand through the waterfront master plan, there are several parcels, not really established parcels yet, but an area labeled number 3 in orange here that is seen as being maintained as industrial primarily to support the Port of Marathon, which is, of course, the planned deepwater port. And these industrial lands would support light industrial uses such as warehousing and storage associated and supporting the port. But heavy industrial uses like manufacturing, noxious uses with emissions and things like that would be prohibited in this particular industrial area because it would be in close proximity to future public open spaces and recreation along the rest of the waterfront. And lastly, the large swath of green in the draft waterfront master plan was identified as open space that contains many, many recommendations for wonderful programming that we hope comes to fruition in this area, including a marina, public beaches, public parks and trails, a dog park, and also some recreation towards commercial uses, including conversion of the pump house to a potential commercial use to support the public amenities here. So in order to really redesignate this industrial area, there would need to be, the town would need to undertake first remediation of the lands because they're formerly an industrial use and contaminated in certain locations. And we understand that a provincial record of site condition approval would be required. So at this stage, we would be recommending that these lands be redesignated in the official plan as future development with plans for these public open space and recreation areas, pending remediation and the record of site condition in the future. Ultimately, this area would permit, as I mentioned, a mix of tourist, commercial, recreational, and open space uses. And the last recommendation is complementary to updating all of the official plan policies and designations. We will be undertaking the updates to the official plan schedules or maps. There are currently, I believe, 3 schedules. We're proposing to add a 4th. So Schedule A would be showing all of the land use designations for each property located within the town's urban service area, or again, referred to as the settlement area at the province. And Schedule B would show the boundary of the entire municipality. So all of the areas outside of the settlement area that also have land use designations and which are primarily designated rural today, and that would remain. And then Schedule C would be an overlay schedule. So it would show natural features in the town, including wetlands and water courses, and other features that may pose development constraints and are there for information purposes should someone wish to develop a property. So things like the location of abandoned mine sites, which the province maps, as well as the location of mineral aggregate resources and natural hazard lands. to the extent that those are mapped and available. And lastly, the new schedule to be added would be the potential wildland fire hazard areas, which again is based on provincial mapping and forest types that have higher extreme potential for wildland fires. So this is again for development information.
So Anita, another question on that. So if you take a look at the municipal boundaries in total, they're quite much bigger than what you're presenting on the map. But those are
Yes.
under crown land. So there's crown land, we know that. So would it not be advantageous for the public to understand the municipal boundaries in general and then put the settlement area on that bigger picture?
Yes, yeah, because that map isn't very legible for the purposes of this presentation, we're only showing the settlement area map that the town's official plan currently has. But
Yep.
your official plan does have a schedule that shows the entire municipal boundary. The location of the town site or the urban serviced area is outlined, and then it has its own more detailed zoomed in schedule. But all of the lands in the town's entire boundary do have a designation applied to them, whether they are crown or otherwise.
So what I'm getting at is it is there for public viewing. It's be skewed on this presentation
That's correct.
process.
That's right, yeah. The official plan as it stands today, the 2016 official plan is available online, and those maps are also available on the town's webpage. So our task is to update those schedules as we update the draft official plan and the policies.
Great, because we always have inquiries as to why we can't, be putting stuff outside the settlement area. We can, but it has to go through a process of working with the Crown to understand how we, adjust those properties or identify what the uses are going to be.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
And we just wanted to finish up with next steps. So after this special meeting, we will be looking to finalize the policy directions and recommendations report to incorporate any input that we receive from town council this afternoon and community members in the coming weeks. Assuming we receive the direction from council today, we will proceed with preparing the draft official plan and schedules. Firstly, for town staff review this fall, and then the draft plan would be submitted to the ministry for a required 90-day review period. And we're targeting submission to the ministry by the end of this year. During that time period, that 90 days while the ministry is reviewing and preparing comments on the draft plan, our team will begin working with town staff on the zoning bylaw review. So the zoning are more detailed regulations on a lot basis, setting out lot and building requirements, and the changes to the zoning bylaw have to conform with the policies of the official plan. So for example, where we may be introducing the mixed use designation, we would follow that through to the zoning bylaw with a new mixed use zone that establishes what permitted uses properties under that zoning would benefit from, and their lot and building requirements to actually build and develop those lots.
Yeah, I think
Firstly,
Anita.
yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
Yeah,
I was
no.
just going to
I
say
think-
that we would first prepare a zoning strategy report before we dive right into the draft zoning bylaw. So similarly to this policy report, we would prepare a series of zoning recommendations to be presented.
Yeah, I think more than anything for the bigger plan, the official zoning, zoning is going to be the key aspect. I think most of the public is going to be concerned about, and that's always is. It's the official plan is the document we have to present, and that's our guidance for the next 10 years. But it comes right down to the zoning, because that's where the impact it has in the individual's home, property, backyard, commercial, light industrial lots. Those were the ones that really come into place. So that'll be the important part of this document.
Yes, yeah, we have definitely found that the community interest really sparks at the zoning bylaw stage and when people start to really review the individual zoning that's proposed on their properties.
For sure, thank you.
So both the draft official plan and the draft zoning bylaw will be presented at an in-person statutory public open house, which is required under the Planning Act. So our members of our team will be back in the town in the spring to present the drafts of those documents and hopefully get good community feedback and turnout. But they will also be posted online and circulated to the Indigenous communities for their input as well.
Okay.
So those are the immediate next steps, and we just want to thank Council for the opportunity to present our recommendations. We're obviously happy to answer any other questions, and appreciate your feedback that we will integrate into the draft official plan. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Anita and Courtney, for that presentation. And I'll ask council if they have any requests or comments or questions they might have right now. Councilor Lake?
I just have one, and I think we've talked lots in the municipality about food security and the fact that we don't have agricultural land here. Certainly our soils don't indicate we should zone a particular agricultural soil type. But with the plan as it states with mixed use or with commercial, would a greenhouse operation or somebody who wanted to, you know, create an agricultural place in the municipality, does it fit under any of the zones that are proposed now?
Through you, Mayor, I'm unaware if a greenhouse operation is a permitted use in any of the current designations or zones, but it's certainly a type of operation that we have included in other municipal zoning bylaws as a permitted use. So it's just about finding the right designation where that would take place. It may be appropriate for the rural area, but some municipalities do include them in light industrial areas if they're enclosed within a building. There's a lot of vertical farming innovation that's occurring around Ontario. So it's about working with town staff and council to identify where we see that type of use appropriately permitted.
Okay, so that might be something where it could be discussed back with Mr. Parrish and Mr. Skorczynski to identify somewhere within that newly designated light industrial area that there could be potential for that type of greenhouse operation if within the mandate enclosed facilities.
It would likely, the simplest answer, and we'll certainly bring it back, it would probably fall within the enterprise designation, which is kind of the catch-all outside of heavy industrial.
Okay. Councilor Giuliano had a question.
Oh, just a quick question about the expansion of the industrial area, the big purple on the first map. Does that preclude the expansion of the cemetery there? See, it's, I think, the little white box in the cemetery.
So we have not discussed with town staff any plans for expansion to the cemetery lands. If that area within purple were to be designated industrial, then there would definitely need to be specific compatibility considerations with proximity to the cemetery and any future potential expansion. There may be land use conflicts there, obviously. And so I think that warrants further discussion on our part with town staff.
So I appreciate that, Anita, and I think the key is there is right beside number 4 is a little white box that's up on top is where the cemetery is right now. And what I believe Councilor Giuliano is looking at, what is the actual size? Because we're looking at some opportunities maybe with natural burials behind the actual serviced areas. How far does it go back?
So that's already included in that white area.
Okay.
So
Yes,
if
okay.
you think of, you know, where the headstones currently end and there's a road to
Yeah.
the north,
Okay,
that area is already identified as phase 2 expansion to the cemetery, which would include the natural burial area. But it is a good question. So we'll certainly take it back and look at, you know, we get to a population of 5,000,
Yeah.
then, you know, expansion may be necessary. So
so it is the footprint of the existing white box.
we have an expansion area already in the existing footprint. This would be a phase 3 to the
Okay.
existing cemetery.
Good, also identified, perfect. Is that good, Councilor Giuliano?
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, I think it's a substantial document that you're preparing, and of course, it's a 10-year plan, and I like the idea of, you know, we used to be a 5 years, so 10 years, we want to make sure it's identified, as you stated earlier, Anita, that it has to be a new plan, so we don't have to go back to the drawing board, we can put amendments in as we go forward, but I will definitely consider that, but looking forward to the spring meeting, because I think the most important part is the municipality has input on changes from the official zoning bylaws, that's the key. And I would encourage everybody in the community who's listening and wants to tell their friends and neighbors to come on out for that type of meeting to understand if there's any change within that official zoning bylaws that happened in our municipality. Other than that, I want to thank you very much both for doing the presentation today. We look forward to continued correspondence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. We appreciate being here tonight.
Great, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You too.
There's nothing else for discussion today's meeting, so we'll adjourn the meeting at 4:50 p.m. Thank you very much and have a good day.